All right, we got some brand new polling information from Abacus Data, and it's actually pretty good news. So the model pulled out is 156 seats for the Conservatives, the Liberals 148 seats, NDP 7, Bloc 30, Green 2. Now, you might think if that's the case, the Conservatives would be way ahead, but it's actually tied in terms of the actual vote percentage. But the NDP has gained a couple points here, so is the Bloc, so it looks like it's 40% for the Liberals, 40% for the Conservatives. But in this specific model that the Real Albanian Pat modeled out here, it's a Conservative minority. It's not the numbers that we want. Of course, we want a majority, because if we get a minority only, the other parties can team up and stop Pierre, Poilievre and the Conservatives from doing things that they actually need to do. But either way, it's a step in the right direction. I mean, a couple months ago, we were looking at seeing potentially the Liberals call another election within the next year if Trump is still a threat, if the NDP still doesn't have their you-know-what together, if they still got no money, if they still got no leader. It's a perfect time for them to call an election, because then they would win again, probably, and then win a majority, actually. So, but this information here is showing that Canadians are getting a little bit impatient with Mark Carney, rightfully so, as he has done absolutely nothing in 6 months, other than give a minor, and when I say minor, I mean very minor tax break, which is really not helping Canadians at all. It's just a few dollars a month while we starve and we can't have affordable housing, and rent is not affordable. It's a mess right now. And people are starting to say, okay, you had your 6 months honeymoon phase. What's going on here? Why is nothing better? So let's have a look at some of these other numbers here. Now, before we get into this, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It really does help grow the channel, and I appreciate you guys so much for doing that for me. So, we have here the breakdown by region. Atlantic Canada, 60-31 for the Liberals. This one's actually, to be honest with you, seems a little bit odd to me, because the Conservatives did win 10 seats out there. Now, they did overperform the polls in that region, so maybe they just get more Liberals polling out there, but that does seem a little bit high to me. Quebec, yeah, that's about normal. 36 for the Liberals, 29 for the Bloc. You'd like to see this gap close up here, because that way the Bloc would get more seats, taking away from the Liberals mostly, and the Conservatives with 21. Ontario, it's very close. 45 for the Liberals, 43 for the Conservatives. Manitoba, Saskatchewan, 55% for the Conservatives, no shock there. Alberta, 60% for the Conservatives, no shock there at all. And then British Columbia, Conservatives have a pretty sizable lead. They have a 6-point lead over the Liberals. Female voters, it's tied. So female voters are starting to switch back over to the Conservatives, it looks like. And with male voters, it's also tied. So looks like some male voters who decided to vote for Mark Carney are still on board with him for now, but expect this to change. Males usually go with Conservatives in large. So these are numbers that are kind of strange. Again, we're not close to an election, so take the polls for what they are, but I do like breaking them down, because I'm interested in how people change their minds and vote for one party or another, and it is interesting to see those numbers change, but it is interesting to see a tie with both genders. 39 for the Liberals and the Conservatives for females, and 41% for male voters. The women still like the NDP a little bit more than the males do, with only 6% support for the males, while they have 10% support under the females. Age group. Now, this is a little bit disappointing. 18 to 29 years, 40% for the Liberals. Conservatives are close, but I think that what's going on here is you still have a lot of young people who thought that the Liberal Party had a Trudeau problem. They don't understand that Mark Carney a lot of them don't understand that Mark Carney was an advisor, that he's not an outsider, that his track records are terrible, even though his resume may look good if you read the titles only, but not the work that was actually done. So I think they're going to give Mark Carney a little bit more time. Hey, build this housing, create more jobs, cap the immigration, do something to get crime under control, and they're going to give Mark Carney time. But within the next 6 months, I suspect this number to change drastically. This age group does not have much time left for the government to get their act together and help them out, because they've been screwing young people for decades. And every time the Conservatives get in, they start to fix crime and affordability, and then they lose elections because the Liberals are just really good at lying and convincing people to vote for them. I don't think that's going to hold, especially as the Generation Alpha, aka the COVID kids, start growing up and entering this age group. I think you're going to see the Conservatives just dominate in just a few years, starting in just a few months, to be honest with you, when this age group is sick and tired of the Liberal Party altogether. Now, 30 to 44 years old, it's very close. 40% for the Liberals, 39% for the Conservatives. 45 to 59 years old, pretty sizable lead there, 8 points for the Conservatives. And 60 plus, this is another interesting stat here. So usually the boomers, the 60 plus years old, most of your colleagues who listen to this channel, a lot of you are boomers and I appreciate you, but you've got a lot of Liberal colleagues. But it looks like the gap's kind of closing. The boomers had a pretty significant lead, I think by around 10 points at election time. Now it's only 2 points. So in the last 6 months, it's closed pretty significantly. That's great news for the Conservative Party. And the government approval, 50% approve. You're hearing some other places, like I think Ecos had it at like 60. It's not 60. It's closer to that 50% range, which for Mark Carney is not bad news at all for you. You want it more than that, but 6 months of doing nothing, you're lucky to have 50% as it is. Disapprove 30, neutral, unsure at 20. So it's, once this group here starts to join this group here in the red, and this number shrinks because you're going to have people pissed off over the lack of progress, it's going to be interesting. Now, Pierre Poilievre's numbers, this is net favorability of Mark Carney just individually, so 48%, 30 negative. Pierre Poilievre's, though, it's not great. Negative 41%, positive 40, unsure 19. Now again, the unsure will probably join the positive group once Mark Carney continues to fail. And there are a lot of people who think negatively about Pierre Poilievre because they think he's a meanie head and he's too snarky and whatever. You're going to like him a lot more when Carney pisses you off and Pierre gets in and starts putting criminals in jail and having contracting companies come in here and build affordable houses on cheap land, take places. There's places here in Hamilton. There's buildings. They're perfectly fine. There's going to be a little bit of work that needs to go into them, but they could be turned into housing, and they're not. Pierre Poilievre's platform, or one of his platforms on housing, is to get those buildings converted into housing. So we have more places to rent. Right now, there's more people than there are rentals. And that just means rent's going to go up and up and up because they got all the leverage. Landlords, they have all the leverage. So, again, I think over time, you're going to see Pierre kind of storm back here. And I know he was winning in the polls before. The Liberals had a Hail Mary option. They do not have that right now. So just be patient. Don't worry. We'll get our time soon. But this poll shows you that the numbers are starting to turn. Now, we've seen other polls by Abacus show similar things, but what they're saying is that it's very close. That's not what we want, but only 6 months after the election, and it's only very close. Like Mark Carney should have a big lead, and he doesn't. People are very wary of him, even if they voted for him, but those people are going to have a rude awakening soon and realize that they made a big mistake, and that they should have voted for Pierre Poilievre, and that's what we're going to do in the next election.